So we're joined by the incredible team today, and we're going to discuss a topic that comes up quite frequently when it comes to coaching clients, and that topic is comparison. And comparison comes up in all different forms, whether it's comparing yourself to who you were 10 years ago, comparing yourself to other people on social media, comparing yourself to family members. There's so many things that play into why we compare ourselves, and that's what we want to address today. Team, is this something that you guys have noticed in coaching calls or with clients over the last 3 to 6 months?
All the time. And I think like realistically, I know for me anyway, like something I struggle with as well. And I think it's something everybody struggles with to a degree. So I don't think anybody is sort of unique in this being a problem, but definitely it's something that we come across with a lot of people.
I've been there myself, and I think this happens quite frequently. I mentioned this just a moment ago, but in fact, Jacob said something horrible to me. He said, "Daddy, that old picture of you, you look so much bigger and stronger there. I like that version of you." And I was like, "Oh, that crushed me to my very, very core." I was like, "Oh my God, I need to go back to doing that." But then I remember what life was like when I was doing that. I was training again 5, 6, 7 times a week. I was training up to 3 times a day at different points to be that bodybuilder, to win those trophies. And it was my number one goal. And it was the only thing on my mind. I wanted to get on stage and I wanted to win that trophy for whatever reason it was. And then just realizing that actually, if I tried to do that now, I would get no work done. I wouldn't be able to support my clients. I wouldn't be able to, stand here and speak to you guys right now about these topics because it just wouldn't be in my mind. I wouldn't even care about these topics, to be honest. So it's really, really important that we recognize like who we are right now and the goals that we've got for ourselves and why it's so important that we are aligned with our ambitions. There's no point me trying to compare myself to who I was 5 years ago. There's absolutely no point because it's not going to happen. And do you guys have these similar sorts of experiences with yourself?
Yeah, I think also, especially with just coming out of lockdown, there's probably a lot of people comparing themselves to pre-lockdown. So, like what they could lift in terms of weights in the gym before lockdown compared to now. And I think there's that mindset that you need to keep focused in the current, like present moment, not what you could do in the past. Obviously, again, with a lot of mothers who might compare themselves to what they used to look like pre-pregnancy. Their body's gone through a lot of changes, and where they are now is different to where they were before. And also when it comes to time, like you mentioned, do you have the time as you did back then to achieve some of the goals now? So it's again having a bit of compassion for yourself, reassessing your goals, and focusing on the present and where you want to be in the future.
I think you absolutely nailed it there. I think especially you talked about mothers there, and I think actually being compassionate towards yourself is such an important element of progress within any form of journey, right? Because why are we talking about this? Because we know that if you're comparing yourself to a version of you that it doesn't exist anymore, what's going to happen? You're going to start to feel demotivated. You're going to start to feel demoralized. And if you're starting to have these feelings, that's going to create doubt. And as soon as there's doubt in your mind, that splits the prefrontal cortex. You don't know which direction to head down. And as soon as there's that moment of doubt and that's planted in your mind, you start to become either overthink some of the actions that you need to take, or you just go into freeze mode where you just don't do anything at all. And that becomes a bigger problem, because if you're not doing anything at all, you're not taking action on the goals you've got. How frustrating is that? How actually frustrating is that? But we see this in other formats as well. And Jyoti, you mentioned about people comparing where they are now compared to pre-lockdown. And I know that other members of that we're working with right now have also got this thought process in the gym, maybe comparing themselves to others. Chris, is that something you've seen as well?
Yeah, and I think especially within kind of your setup. So, for example, your training, it's sort of very easy to compare your training to other people's and question whether that is something you should be doing instead. Why are they doing this exercise? Why am I doing that one? I think it's very easy to do when you see people in the gym. And I think it's just trying to really get to that mindset of, this is my program. It's been created for me. I know why I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And just carry on focusing on that, knowing that if you put the right amount of hard work and effort into that program, that's going to be just as beneficial as doing what anybody else is doing would be, if not more so, because that'll have been specifically tailored to you and your current situation, which is a big one.
I think that's huge. And think what we notice about people in the gym, they don't always necessarily have the greatest depth of knowledge around what they're doing and why they're doing it. And it just does tend to be just one person blindly following another. And I remember trying to deadlift like 220 back in the day. And I used to get to the point where I could get it up. God knows what my form was like. But I was doing it because I was going to a powerlifting gym. And that's what everybody else was doing in that gym. That was not aligned to my goals. I'm trying to play football. I'm trying to be stronger for, getting on the pitch, trying to run around, trying to barge people off the ball. And then I'm trying to then deadlift 220 kilos. The goals didn't align. And that's why I kept getting injured as well. So it's interesting that you picked up on that. Are there any other forms of comparison that we're seeing at the moment?
Social media is a big one as well, like that we get all the time. And I think, like you were saying before, with not being able to compare to your past self, you can't compare to other people as well, because there's so much that comes into what your physique looks like, how strong you are, how fit you are, how quickly you progress, like genetics, your history, your environment, what your workload's like, what your family situation's like. So much comes into play, and your particular combination of circumstances are not going to be the same as someone else's, so your progress is not going to be the same as someone else's.
Yeah. Okay, so that opens up like a whole other kettle of fish. So when we're starting to think about comparison, and we're looking online and we're looking at socials and we're looking at that information, like that was a client question that we had last week, where an individual had been successfully losing around 1 kilo a week. He was 6 weeks into his program, I think 6 kg down. He'd not really had any issues with eating carbohydrates, hadn't really had any problems with eating sugary foods within that time frame, having a few biscuits here and there, having a bit of cake. But then he saw somebody's account online. It was misinformation. Social media is full of misinformation. He saw that one statement to say that carbs are basically poison to the human body. So disregard that we've been eating carbs for forever. And suddenly this one individual's got this notion that carbs are the enemy. We don't need to go into all the science of that, but maybe that's another topic for another time. But it's just interesting just how much that can derail you. Like, it's been working for you. You've been successful in your approach so far. You see this one piece of information online and it completely takes away from everything you've been doing. And again, if that's putting you into a spiral effect and you don't have somebody to reach out to and you don't have somebody to communicate this with, where do we end up? Confused and starting a new diet every single Monday. So yeah, thank you for raising that. And I think social media is a massive one. Sorry, John, you were about to say something there as well.
I think that ties in really well. What I was going to say was being a big factor is trusting yourself or trusting your coach. If you're a novice to training, you don't really know much, but you have a coach and they give you a plan, give you a nutrition plan to tell you the whys. I think you should trust kind of that process, especially if you are, say, losing weight or gaining muscle. If you are seeing results, I think that it doesn't have to be overcomplicated.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, so I'm just going to run around real quick now. What would the top piece of advice be? So one bit of advice each for anybody that's struggling with comparison right now. And I'm going to jump in there first because I want to say this before anybody else does. And sorry, Stacey, I think you might have mentioned this.
Yeah, you're going to steal mine. Yeah.
I'm stealing yours. Cleanse your social media. And the reason I'm showing this, because I did post this yesterday, if I'm honest, cleanse your social media. Recognize what your intakes are, your inputs are on your social media every day. What are you watching on the news? What are you watching on TV? How do they make you feel? If they're having a negative impact on you, you've got to get rid of them. You've just got to cut them out. And you've got the choice and you've got the power over your socials. So take control, remove the accounts that aren't making you feel good, and focus on the ones that give back to you, that help educate you and inspire you.
Yeah, thanks. I think I'll say if you want to try and use comparison as a tool, then do it within yourself and do it habit-based, not progress-based. So instead of saying, oh, I'm fatter than I was 6 months ago, or oh, I'm not as strong as I was 6 months ago, say like, okay, today, how have I achieved the habits I was supposed to achieve compared to yesterday? How have I ticked the boxes I was supposed to tick compared to yesterday? So use it as a marker of your own progress from a habit perspective, rather than trying to use it to compare apples and oranges.
I was going to say, so write down your goals like on a monthly basis rather than a yearly or twice yearly, because then at least you're focusing on the present moment, so that your goals are changing with what you're able to do as well.
I love that adaptability. Absolutely love that. John, Chris.
I think a big one is that hard work underpins everything. So if you're comparing yourself to other people, instead of thinking about what they're doing and what you're doing, just reflect on your sort of current work ethic and are you working as hard as you are? Because the people who are where you want to be, irrelevant of their circumstances, they probably have worked as hard as they could have to get where they want to be. So as long as you're working as hard as you can, you're going to be in the best place you can be in the future.
I love that. Coming back to the effort levels.
Well, I think there's so many different factors for people trying to get to a specific goal. So just know that your journey is completely different to everyone else's journey. So just keep that in mind.
100%. Thank you, guys. This has been incredible. Really, really good. Quick summary of comparison. And again, if it's anything that you guys are struggling with right now, if it's something that's coming up in your journey, if it's something that's actually stopping you from taking action, please feel free to reach out, ask any questions, message us on our Facebook group and our open support group as well, and allow us to support you. Anyway, have a great weekend and we'll catch up soon.